Hey there, 75B peeps. Here to give you a quick overview of week 3. We've got some great stuff coming up there. First of all, there will be a video here. That's what you're watching right now. We're going to be looking at Sarah Orne Jewett and Kate Chopin, two very prominent women writers of the 19th century. And we're going to start some work on post-Civil War African American writers and activists. That includes Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Some people say Du Bois. I've heard it go both ways. Du Bois is the more French way. Take your pick. So for Wednesday, you've got two short stories, A White Heron by Jewett and The Storm by Kate Chopin. Now, you also have on Saturday, Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery and W.E.B. Du Bois' The Souls of Black Folk. Two very different writers with two very different aims and two very different styles too. So they're an interesting comparison. They get paired a lot. And you will see you've got your video lectures right here to give you background information. I will have to put up Du Bois and Washington on this site as well. That's not coming up until this Saturday. So I got a little bit of time to do that. I just want to make sure I got all this stuff. But if you notice, if you don't have the books yet, I have A White Heron and Kate Chopin here in PDF. And here you can see it's very nicely laid out here for you. Great short story. Hope you like it as much as I do. And ooh, look, I got a storm picture. I should have found a white heron picture too. Now, one thing you need to know about The Storm is that it was published posthumously. In other words, after Kate Chopin had died. And that's because of its content. Just like we looked at some posthumously published work by Mark Twain, we've got some here by Chopin as well. And The Storm is a very famous short story now because it treats women and women's agency and also women's desire and sexuality in a way that wasn't really portrayed at the time. In fact, if you notice by my notes here, it's a sequel to an earlier story called At the Cajun Ball. You don't need to read that one in order to understand The Storm. You might want to click here and just get the summary because you've got two very different groups going on in this story. Remember, it takes place down in Louisiana near New Orleans, and you've got the Creoles, who are French, but are also relatively wealthy, landowners, very local. And then you have the Acadians, and the Acadians come down to the U.S. from Canada because the French Canadians got kicked out of there by the English, and it's a big long thing. Acadian, that word kept changing over time to become the word Cajun. And if you're familiar with excellent food, I guess what the word would be is legacies or cuisines in the U.S., Cajun food is some of the best you'll ever find. I didn't say it was healthy, but it's fantastic. And it's a real American invention because it's taking French cooking techniques with what was available to cook with locally in Louisiana and around the area of the Gulf. Now, that makes it extremely American. In some ways, it's an analog to jazz, which is also very American, you know. It takes a lot of the African melodic and musical structures and thematics that were then turned into slave songs and gospel songs, but it applies a very different musical structure to them. That's probably more than you wanted to hear at this point. But anyway, you've got the Creoles versus the Cajuns. And one thing you do need to remember is that Alcée Labayère, he is a Creole. But anyway, this little background's nice. You can read the whole story about the Cajun Ball here if you want to. I don't think it's necessary, and it's a little bit long-winded. It's nowhere near as tight or as good or as memorable, I think, as The Storm. But anyway, you can get some good context here from katechopin.org. And it looks like somebody wrote this out in MLA format, which is fine. It's a perfect copy from what I quickly scanned. Anyway, I hope you enjoy that one too. Now, coming up, going back here, do keep in mind you've got a week 3 comments and discussion due on Wednesday. We'll talk about that a little bit. Now, notice we do every week for discussions, we do last Saturdays, which in this case would be Ambrose Bierce, and then we're going to do Wednesdays. I would never have you do discussion and a reading on the same day. So to make you do Washington and Du Bois right after you finished reading it, doesn't make sense to me. Need time to process this stuff. So jumping over here, and that wasn't it. I thought I had already opened it. Now, if you notice here, it says January 25th, it's due. And that's just to remind you that your initial comment is due that day. Remember, the replies are not due until Wednesday. Keep that in mind. I'm going to keep them a little more flexible, but this is going to be the last week for that. In other words, after that, I'm going to make, a pretty hard delineation, a pretty hard deadline for posting your comment and your replies by 11:59 every Sunday. So I'm going to be asking you to think about Ambrose Bierce's 2 short stories, Occurrence at Owl Creek Ridge and Chickamauga. They've got something similar going on at the end, and if you've read them already, I think you kind of have an idea. If not, we can talk about it. No spoilers. I'm not going to tell you if you haven't gotten there. But they're also short stories about the Civil War, and they're very emotionally complicated stories about the Civil War. They're also very personal as well. Now, I also want you to put at least one strong line in to help you answer the question. So, how does this plot device work with the theme of the Civil War? So, in other words, how does that work in Occurrence at Owl Creek Ridge and also in Chickamauga? Chickamauga is the name. Oh, I forgot the quotation marks there. Is the name of an important battle site in the Civil War. Other thing I want to mention to you is that, put down a strong line. In other words, whatever your position is on this or whatever your thoughts are, take a line from the text, copy it, paste it in there to use it to go off of. This is really important because it gets you used to referring back to the text in order to explain your position. And this is kind of like our soft warm-up or our training for how we're going to be writing our papers. Remember, we got 2 essays for this class. And then you'll be doing Sarah Orne Jewett and Kate Chopin. And I'm asking you to think about the themes and the characters and the plots of these short stories and how they may be different in your mind from the largely male American literature canon, especially at that time. See if you notice a difference. And again, use that strong line, at least one phrase or sentence that sticks out to you, and in this case helps you answer the question. If you need to put down a few sentences or something, that's great. Don't be like, yeah, I've got 6 sentences here and they make up 70 words. I only have to write 5. Whatever your quotation is, whatever your strong line is, don't consider that part of your 75. I shouldn't have to say that, but I'm going to say it. Anyway, everything else here is standard. And that's a pretty by the books week here. I was talking a little bit slower when I made these videos, and that's because I did have some students say that maybe I'm going too fast. If you go on the little gear button on YouTube, you can speed me up by, 1.25, 1.5, whatever works for you, as long as you're still taking notes along the way. Taking notes about their background and about what their literary importance is, I think is really important. It's also, once again, soft training and soft prep for the quizzes that are coming up, and also the papers. So that's all that I have to say about the overview at this point. If you've got any questions at all, remember I've got my advice hours posted. I would love to hear from you. Until then, thanks for watching.